Today, let's delve into the narrative of a 2010 movie titled Deep in the Woods, which recounts the tale of a young lad named Timothy who embraces a simple life. However, his path takes a twist when he encounters a captivating girl, leading him to exert influence over her. Set in 1865, Timothy, a wanderer, stumbles upon a quaint French village. There, he crosses paths with the lovely Josephine. Though she finds Timothy unkempt and unpleasant, despite her attempts to distance herself, Josephine senses his persistent presence shadowing her. Eventually, Timothy arrives at Josephine's residence, vigilantly observing her every move. Alongside her, he encounters Paul, who is destined to marry Josephine. Remaining outside her home day and night, Timothy meticulously monitors her activities. Under the cover of darkness, he infiltrates her abode. Possessing an extraordinary ability to manipulate others, he ensnares Josephine's loyal canine companion, spending the night within her home. The following day, masquerading as mute and deaf, Timothy appeals to Josephine's compassionate father, renowned for aiding the less fortunate. Moved by Timothy's apparent plight, he extends hospitality, unaware of the deceit lurking beneath. Although Josephine's father recognizes Timothy's education, he remains oblivious to his ulterior motives. Meanwhile, Josephine harbors disdain toward Timothy but finds herself inexplicably drawn to him over Paul. Seizing opportunities, Timothy gradually asserts control over her, deceiving her father with claims of mystical powers and foresight. Through cryptic writings and manipulative actions, he ensnares Josephine's psyche, leaving her bewildered and restless. In the days that follow, Josephine begins exhibiting peculiar behavior, alarming her father, who perceives her ailment. She withdraws from Paul, signaling further distress. After some time, her gaze lands on Timothy, who is still wandering nearby. Though she attempts to avoid eye contact out of fear, she finds herself unable to do so. Timothy revisits the house once more. After indulging in his magical pursuits, he coerces Josephine into preparing food. Not stopping there, he manipulates her into losing consciousness. Upon awakening, Josephine recollects the events and feels repulsed, yet finds herself inexplicably drawn to Timothy. Despite her fear and loathing, she trails behind him and arrives at an unfamiliar residence. There, Timothy falsely asserts that he and Josephine are wed. The household momentarily recoils in fear, but Timothy claims Josephine shares his mental fragility. Despite her attempts to seek assistance, Timothy exerts control once more, utilizing her like a marionette. He instills fear in the household, paralyzing them with dread, ensuring that no one comes to Josephine's aid. Day and night, he subjects her to relentless torment. Eventually, the family expels Timothy from their home, attempting to extricate him and heal Josephine. However, Josephine's condition deteriorates, and they realize only Timothy can dispel the enchantment. Reluctantly, they summon her back home. Timothy soothes Josephine and whisks her away. They roam the mountains together, with Josephine obediently following his commands. Despite her desire, she cannot resist. Gradually, she loses herself entirely, ensnared in a life of degradation and torment. Exhausted from days of travel, Josephine pleads with Timothy to no avail. He continues to exploit her without remorse. In a desperate bid for help, Josephine encounters a man only to discover that he, too, is mentally unstable. She returns to Timothy's side. One day, Timothy is attacked by strangers, but they can only injure him. It is then that Josephine learns of Timothy's frequent injuries and his past violence. After weeks of wandering, they stumble upon a wedding celebration and find nourishment. Despite her previous animosity, Josephine inexplicably begins to feel affection for Timothy. Much to his surprise, she requests that he simulate a wound on her shoulder as a gesture. However, this is a ruse orchestrated by Josephine. Once she senses she has gained Timothy's trust, she seizes the opportunity to flee from him. Her escape is relentless, and she makes it home, screaming for aid. Fortunately, the house's occupants manage to rescue her from Timothy's clutches. Josephine divulges everything, but collapses and remains in their care. Yet, late into the night, Timothy ensnares her once more with his enchantments, compelling her to accompany him again. Josephine becomes trapped in Timothy's control once more. The situation worsens to the point where she develops genuine affection for him. She begins probing Timothy about what he perceives in her eyes and mind when he casts his spells. Timothy confesses that he cannot discern anything, which leads Josephine to guess that she isn't even afraid of death. This revelation makes Timothy intervene to spare Josephine from a fatal outcome. Ironically, Josephine, like Timothy, resorts to thievery and resigns herself to a life she didn't desire. Regret weighs heavily on Timothy, prompting him to seek guidance from the individual who taught him magic. He expresses a desire to spend his life with Josephine, and surprisingly, she reciprocates. She chooses to remain by his side, tending to his needs daily. Josephine brings a doctor from a nearby village to attend to Timothy. The doctor recommends hospitalization, but their plans are interrupted when policemen arrive due to the doctor's presence. Timothy is apprehended, and Josephine is reunited with her father after months of separation. Relieved to see her safe, her father takes her home while Timothy faces imprisonment, having lost his hand due to an earlier wound. In an unexpected turn, the jailer questions Timothy about Josephine, puzzled by how he supposedly coerced her to accompany him. Timothy refutes the assumption, claiming Josephine willingly chose to leave with him. Witness testimony supports Timothy's assertion that Josephine had been under his control and lived in constant fear. When confronted with these revelations, Timothy admits to his ability to cast spells, even though it was against the law. He acknowledges that he initially coerced her, but states that after a while, Josephine began approaching him willingly, enjoying the closeness. When questioned, Josephine confirms that she had been following Timothy under the influence of his voice and not in her right mind. The jailer deems Josephine's account false, as it seems implausible that she could have remained under Timothy's sway for so long. However, Josephine isn't just a pawn. She had her own desires, and thus she chose to pursue Timothy on her own terms. Gradually, she stops coercing him, unwilling to confront the truth herself due to the shame it would bring. To corroborate her story, she shows a scar inflicted by Timothy at her request, but the jailer remains skeptical. To determine Josephine's susceptibility to control, a hypnotist is summoned. The hypnotist's evaluation confirms Josephine's independence. Despite the passage of time, Josephine's father harbors regret, puzzled by why she hadn't fled Timothy when the opportunity arose. Josephine remains silent on this matter during the court proceedings. She asserts that everything occurred against her will, though the reality differs. Ultimately, out of love for Josephine, Timothy concedes the truth of her testimony, sparing her public humiliation. Josephine goes on to lead a contented life, but her father lives in perpetual fear. One day, Josephine learns she is pregnant. Before his passing, her father arranges her marriage to Paul. With Paul and their child, Josephine prepares to relocate to Paris. Before departing, she expresses a desire to bid Timothy farewell. She visits him, and he is elated to meet their child, naming the child after himself. Timothy bids them farewell before departing. Josephine adorns the ring Timothy had given her, symbolizing her enduring love. With Paul, she embarks on her journey to Paris.